Now we're going to talk about film Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Yeah, and in the spirit of uniting the world, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.
Yeah, so how long have they been trying to make this film?
I don't know actively, but I'm pretty sure it's been 25 years, yeah.
Yeah.
I know after the second movie, they weren't sure if they were going to make another one. I don't know the history there, but I know that as the years went on, they were like, we should do another one. The key thing to this is that Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter have always wanted to make another one.
Yes.
So they were the ones who were like going back and forth. And it also helps a lot that they're actual buddies in real life. And they've been buddies since they were kids, obviously. They were like early 20s in the first movie. They were like 22 or something like that. Mm-hmm. They're close in age. So the fact that these two wanted to do it and that the two writers stayed together and they wanted to do it is pretty much the only reason this movie can exist, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no way like a Hollywood studio. There's no Hollywood studio. Orion Pictures died and came back to life before this movie came out.
Yeah.
Like there's no other way that this movie could have existed if it wasn't for the sheer willpower of the people involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a Hollywood story of like what it actually takes to make a film. It takes persistent hard work, never giving up, and eventually your time will come. You know, Keanu's been on the ascent, and a whole bunch of things happen.
Think about it. Keanu's been on the up. You know, maybe he's gone up and down, but like he was a superstar in the '90s.
Yeah.
So like like this never happened. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, and you never know. And sometimes it's like the last moment you would expect is a moment when it's perfect to happen.
Right.
Yeah, like you said, Orion just came back.
Yeah, they came back like last year or something.
Like, yeah, and they're like, "Oh, sure, let's do it." You know?
which is so funny because I like a lot that Face the Music is, again, all the people that were involved wanted to make this thing, and it is a very, very, very concerned effort to make sure that they get everything right. They get all of the people that were in the originals as much as possible, get all those actors back, get the writers and the cast is in, even so far to the point that the original fucking studio that died is now back.
Yeah. And like Orion has a great, like that Orion like opening that they show is just, it's classic.
Very recognizable, yeah.
It's super recognizable.
And they kept the same one. Like, they didn't update it at all. Like, the beginning of this movie is like the 80s Orion intro.
Yeah. I mean, there was another film that they did that I saw. It was Gretel and Hansel. Same opening.
Yeah. Okay, so they're just keeping that.
They keep it, man. Like, they know what their brand is and they know what works.
Sick. It's sick. I love it. I'm going to check out some more of their more recent output because, a big fan of the 80s stuff. I'm a little bit of an old soul, so.
Yeah. So they're back. Bill and Ted are back, and there's sort of a prologue at the beginning. They talk about what their lives have been like since the last movie, and they've kind of been successful, but they haven't really done
unite the world successful, right?
They have not united the world, and their music's getting worse. It's periodically getting worse.
Yeah.
So the beginning of the movie, Bill and Ted, they're at this wedding for was it Ted's brother?
Ted's younger brother, Deacon, yeah.
Younger brother Deacon. And Bill and Ted, they're gonna play this song. Oh, by the way, we should also mention they're married and they both have a daughter.
Correct. Now, at the end of Bogus Journey, we find out that they propose to their girls, their princesses or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we see the two kids, which I believe in that movie are referred to as the boys or whatever, like the Bill and Ted Jr. And then it turns out that they were actually daughters the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is totally fine, but it's kind of they poke fun at it in the movie. They're like, "Oh, I remember when we used to call you Bill and Ted, like little Bill and Ted." Because I read an interview with Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson where they said like for 10 years, like they were working on this script and they kept banging their heads against the wall. They were like, okay, so they have two sons, Bill and Ted Jr. And they kept grinding away at it. And they said that every single time they would come up with a new idea, it would just be a carbon copy of the same characters. Like there wasn't anything to it. There was no, it wasn't going anywhere until they decided, wait a minute, what if we just gender swap it, put a twist on it, and then were able to come up with the script of this movie, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it kind of makes sense because that does make it. Otherwise, it would just be it'd almost be like a passing of the torch that didn't
Yeah, I mean,
like a passing the torch?
This movie is still a passing of the torch, right?
Yeah.
But like, it's like you said, yeah, it would have just been. They said that basically they just came up with a rehash of the same movie again and again and again, which is what Force Awakens was.
Yeah. There's a lot of franchises where that ends up happening, where it's just like, or it's just worse, or you get like Speed 2.
Oh God, yep.
Disasters like that.
Love Speed 2. Such a shit movie.
Yeah, really bad. Whoever thought, like, I saw this interview once with the producer of that, and he said he saw dailies of the boat, and he just saw like the boat. It was like, dude, this boat's slow, and he was at that point. He was like, this is a disaster.
Fuck.
It's a disaster. And he's like, but it's too late. It's too late.
Imagine signing off like $200 million on a movie where you know that it takes place on a boat, and then you see the dailies. You're like, boats are slow.
Yeah, like they're that dumb. They just don't get it. It's like, dude, it's a cruise ship. What do you think? You think it's gonna go 500 miles an hour?
Baby. I don't know, man. But this is an anti-Hollywood movie. Proceed.
So the daughters are played by it's Brigette Lundy-Paine and Samara Weaving. Samara Weaving's like, she's a huge star.
She's a known quantity now. Yeah,
she's a big time known quantity. And I really like Bridget's performance of the two of them.
I loved it.
I thought it was just so amazing.
I loved it. Really
like
on point.
The mannerisms are just like she'd do small things like, oh my God, that was like right on point. Like you are a clone of him. A female clone of him. It's amazing. And
I saw that complaint because I read some of the not critic reviews, but I read some like online reviews of what the fans thought of this movie. And there's a strong, well, first of all, you have the group of haters that are like, oh, this is just woke Hollywood bullshit. They made it about the daughters, futurist female, all that. Like you always hear that.
Yeah.
And I expect to hear that. But a lot of people were saying that like, oh, they're just carbon copies of Bill and Ted. They're not interesting. Every time the girls were on screen, I would just groan and it was so boring. And like, yes, they are carbon copies, which kind of like goes against the point that I just made about the writers. But like for some reason it works. And I think it works because of the performances. And I think it works because it's interesting to see these two conventionally girly girls act like Bill and Ted. I don't know. There's just something about it that works.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah, especially with Brigette, it's just so fun, and like to see her like the way that she mimics the mannerisms. Yeah, like if it was two like young surfer dudes that looked like Keanu and Alex, it would have not worked. I don't. Think. It just would have felt a little bit on the nose. Yeah, I think. Would have been like, oh, that's the younger Uses or something stupid like that. I might as well just be like they go back in time and get themselves again. Right. Which I'm sure it was a draft. Yeah, probably. Yeah. So they then get talked to by Kelly, the daughter of Rufus, and she tells Bill and Ted, brings them to the great leader, and it's like, you have until X time to write the song that will save the universe and play it, or else reality itself will unravel. Yeah, because in the first two movies, the prophecy was always that they would write the song that unites the world and makes everything great or whatever. But the whole like the world is ending thing is new to them. That's new news. It's like, yes, you have to play the song, otherwise the world is going to end. Yeah. Otherwise, our movie franchise will have no purpose. Yeah. We got to raise the stakes at some point. Exactly. Yeah. So the great leader gives them a bunch of like guitars, and it's like, okay, make the song. But they're like, we kind of suck right now. So yeah, I love. There's a great line where it's like, in 1992, you play the Grand Canyon. Last week, you played the whatever dive bar to 40 people. and everyone like, showed up. Everyone showed up because it was Taco Tuesday. That's right. Whatever that means, because we're in the future. We don't know what tacos are. I don't want to be in a future without tacos. I know. Anyway. It seems miserable. Yeah, the future is kind of miserable. A little. It always has been. It's always been weird. Yeah, it's a mix of that. It's like that '80s kind of like cruel future. It's like really weird. Yeah. So they're like, what are we gonna do? Bill and Ted, they just don't know what to do. And so then they decide, do what we did before. We're gonna hijack the time machine and go forward in time to find the moment where we wrote the song. Yeah, and just take it from ourselves. Yeah. Great logic. It's like the logic of the whole series, right? It's just like,
it's like stoner logic, like the dude. But like if we must have written it at some point, so we go into the future and steal it from ourselves. Yeah.
And so one thing, going back a little bit to there's a subplot with their wives that comes up, and I thought was really funny. So they go to this therapist, and basically Bill and Ted are unable to speak about their wives outside of Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like the relationship is the four of them, not the two. So it was like so funny. So it's like, hey, whatever the wife is, like, I love you, and so does Bill loves the other one.
Yeah. I and Bill love you.
I thought that was so funny. It's like they're a thing. They're just a thing that cannot be separated.
And they do a good job of like implying that if this seems ridiculous now, imagine that this has been going on for 25 years. So you can kind of understand why these characters might at some point want to look for something else, right?
Yeah. And so, but then there's sort of this feeling that there's turmoil in their marriages, that it could be ending. And so that's another plot point that gets brought up throughout the film, is like, is their marriage with their wives going to be resolved, or is it going to end?
Yeah. Well, it goes with the whole thing of everything's at stake. The world's ending. We're going to lose our wives. Everything's at stake. And then at some point, there's a killer robot that comes in and starts killing people. And then even more is at stake.
Yeah. So they go, like 2 years forward in time to see their future selves? And they find themselves kind of, they're not totally distraught, but they're like playing a dive bar, right? They're playing another bar. Yeah. And they try to run away, and
they don't understand why they're still playing dive bars if they will have already written the song that united the universe, right? And saved humanity. So they're like, well, if we, weird, but okay. And then they decide to go even further into the future and further into the future.
Yeah, they keep going further, and they keep kind of finding themselves still in. They go again. They find themselves in prison. They go, and before that, they go to a place where they think that they've finally done it. But it turns out that they're just like loitering at Dave Grohl's house.
They play them a song, and they're like, wow, this is clearly the song that's going to unite the universe, and it just happens to be probably like one of Dave Grohl's demos or something.
Yeah, it's just a demo from Dave Grohl that he's not even going to use. It's like a B-side of some.
That was a pretty good scene. It was a surprise. Yeah,
Dave Grohl shows up, and then that's when Bill and Ted, the I guess present selves, the non-time traveling selves, get into a lot of trouble. They, then SWAT, the police comes up, and it's Ted's dad shows up?
San Dimas SWAT is so funny to me, because fucking Ted's dad has always been the chief of police in San Dimas in these movies. But then I thought he was just going to show up because it's the same actor from the old movie. So he's really old now. He's probably like in his 80s or something. So I thought he was just going to... Yeah, I thought there was just a cameo in the beginning at the wedding, and then I thought that was going to be it. And then the dad shows up in the SWAT van, and then you're like, of course, if he's the chief of police, of course he would be leading the squad, the fucking SWAT squad.
Yeah.
But he's this like 80-year-old man coming out of the SWAT van. He's like, all right, circle the perimeter. And you're like, hold on.
What is going on?
Yeah, it's great, though. It's great. It's just like, again, it goes to the whole point of this movie. Just like, we're going to keep everything. We're keeping it together. Yeah. We're keeping the band together.
Like, they're really trying to keep the continuity of the film.
Yes,
like,
that's
everything
what it is.
You saw. And it was the brother the same actor?
The brother was not, no. However, the brother, we should have mentioned for the fans, I guess, he's marrying Missy, who is the same actress as Missy in the first two movies. And she was the one who has been kind of passed around the entire cast of characters, married and banged all of them. So there's a great gag where they're like, technically, my father is his own son now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fun. It's stupid shit. It's just silly shit. I love it.
Yeah, it's really fun. They have a lot of fun with all these kind of things for fans, like people who are really into.
And I think if it wouldn't have been the same writers, I don't think they would have come up with the same kind of continuity, time paradox type jokes. Like that's.
Oh yeah, no way.
They probably would have made a lot of references, but this movie does a good job of not only making references, but like making new jokes and tying things together of the logic that is already present in the movies, which I really appreciate.
So yeah, at this scene with the SWAT, our killer robot makes an appearance and tries to kill Bill and Ted, but fails and kills the dad.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh shit, okay, I guess that's one way to get rid of the dad.
And then he's sent to hell.
And then he shows up in hell and you're like, oh, we're doing all of it. We're doing this all again. Of it. We're going to hell. We're going, yeah,
we're doing all of it. So meanwhile, in I guess what would be the present with the daughters, they
in the present they go back to the past.
I think there's a conversation like that. Like the thing that Hulk said in Endgame, like if the future, if our past is our future becomes our past, or something.
Right, something like that. Yeah.
And so our present is the past of our future.
Oh,
you know, like these brain what? So Kelly comes to their present and is like, "What the hell is going on?" Because her mom is like, and so this is a big deal. They're like, "Oh well, the prophecy might also say that the world is saved when Bill and Ted die." So they decide, okay, they're not going to get it done, so now we're going to kill them. And so they send this killer robot to kill Bill and Ted, but you know the killer robot's kind of incompetent.
Which, I mean, it doesn't make. I mean, again, this is not the type of series that you think about the time stuff, but it doesn't make any sense. I mean, if Rufus was the guy that was championing them, it's implied that he's dead, but like he also is present in future scenes in the older movies. So I don't know how any of that shit works, but somehow the future people, the great leader has decided that it's also possible that if Bill and Ted die, we are saved.
Yeah, and I think they kind of play that off by just having Kelly and the great leader just have a lot of conflict. Like she's just like, you know, Mom, what are you doing? What are you doing, Mom? You
exactly,
know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So Kelly and the daughters basically kind of just, I think the daughters, they like hijack her time pod pretty much.
Well, the daughters basically come up with a plan where they're like, cause there's this whole thing of like, we want to help our dads, we don't know how. And so they figure out that if they're going to write the greatest song of all time, then they should have a backing band. So they basically rehash a little bit of the first movie where they go back throughout history and grab historical figures to play in this band. Yeah. And so they get, so they try to get Jimi Hendrix, which makes Jimi
sense.
Hendrix is like, fuck off. Like, no.
It's like, I'm not interested in groupies right now. And so they kind of, he's like, I'm here to do LSD and jam. I have no interest in you guys.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't even know what you're talking about. Everyone's talking about going to the past and future. Everyone's on LSD.
Yeah. So, exactly.
Which makes sense. I'm glad that he turned them down immediately because if you showed up in 1967, you're like, we're from the future. You're like, sure. Am I.
Here's some LSD, and
aren't we all?
You go away, and I'll. I got a band to play. I got to play the show. So I'll see you later. So then they go back even further. They go to 1922, and they get Louis Armstrong, and they show him like a clip on an iPhone of Jimi Hendrix like jamming.
There's a great scene where Louis Armstrong is looking at the phone. And he's not so much impressed by the Jimi Hendrix playing on the phone. He's just impressed by the phone itself. And so he gets his band. He's like, fellas, come over here. Look at this. And there's like this great line in the background. Like one of the guys is just like, what does that do, Hickey? Or some stupid shit. Like that.
Something stupid. Yeah. It's always fun the way that they like in the whole franchise when they deal with our main characters meeting historical figures, and it's just totally wonky and what was it? The first one, it was like they went to a bowling alley, right? At some point, it was like
to grab someone.
No, but they grabbed them, and then they grabbed them. They basically had him like in a waiting room.
Yeah.
Like Napoleon's bowling.
yeah, and he like doesn't understand bowling shoes or whatever, so he like slides on the thing. Yeah.
But like speaking of which, again, another thing that they're kind of bringing in from the past movies, time is unraveling. It's totally unraveling, and so people are popping in and out of different timelines. Jesus shows up in different places. literally actual Jesus. like George Washington. Yeah, George Washington shows up in the future, and he's like, "What?" There's even a scene where like the wives are talking to the therapist, and then they all leave, and then George Washington shows up on the couch.
And the therapist is just like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. No way. It's great. It's a good reaction.
Yeah. So things are timey-wimey and totally Looney Tunes. But yeah, so the two daughters, Jimi Hendrix says no. Louis Armstrong says yes. They then go back.
They go back to Jimi Hendrix.
And they bring him Louis Armstrong. But
then they make the joke where it's just like Louis Armstrong is still alive in this timeline. And then Hendrix is not recognizing the younger Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
And then they have this like bicker back and forth. They're like, we should have just grabbed 65-year-old Louis Armstrong.
Yeah. But then Louis kind of plays something on the trumpet, and that convinces Jimmy. And then they go to Germany to get Mozart. And that was a fun scene. So Jimi Hendrix plays like the electrical guitar version of a Mozart song.
Yeah. And I like that they kept it consistent with the first movie where Mozart only speaks German. He never speaks like none of the like Socrates in the first movie like didn't understand a word of English, but somehow they all communicate, right? Yeah. There's like a point in this movie where they're like, oh yeah, Mozart told us this and that, or what is it? Ling Lun said this, and they're like, how are you communicating?
Yeah, they just are.
Yeah, and they're all okay with it.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Yeah.
And at some point, I forget if it was before or after, like Kid Cudi gets brought into this movie.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And Kid Cudi is like he completely understands how quantum physics works.
Yeah, he's like this metaphysical god type character that just like understands everything about time travel. Yeah,
it's hilarious, but it was cool seeing him. It's like, oh, by the way, it's Kid Cudi, and and then Kid Cudi and like one of the Bill and Ted daughters like have this discussion about how quantum entanglement works and like what's happening, and it's really funny. It's just it's all over the place, and it's great. And so they also get this. Was it Ling Lun?
Ling Lun, yeah.
Like I guess she plays a flute.
Yeah.
Way back in China.
Must be some kind of incredibly legendary historical musical figure that we don't know about, which I think was the intent of putting that in there, was just like there are other historical figures that are not just like the quote unquote the classics, right? Like there's plenty of like amazing people throughout history that don't get talked about as much. Yeah. And so that's probably why Ling Lun's in this.
Yeah. And the final person is the most legendary of them all, Grom, a cave woman from
ancient Africa or something. Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Maybe this is supposed to be like the first drummer. Maybe that's the idea.
Possibly, but yeah,
the first person to like take a thing, create a drum, and then beat it with a stick.
Well, there's this incredible shot of when they peek into her tent. It's like of the drum set. She already has like a full set, like made out of bongos and like bones and things like that. And it's like smoky, kind of like a concert, and she's just banging these drums in her little tent. It was a really cool visual.
Yeah, that was really fun. But then she sees them and it's like and just runs away.
Right? Yeah.
Because.
But just to imagine that 11,000 years ago there was this insane like Neil Peart type drummer.
Just banging away in a tent.
Yeah.
So that was fun. So then at that point, like, Bill and Ted are doing the time travel stuff, and they're like in and out of stuff, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And so they go all the way forward to like 2067, I think it was.
Yeah. They go back. They go to where like Bill and Ted are 95 years old.
Yeah, and they meet their really, really old selves, and their old selves gives the song to them. Finally, they have it, and they're also their other selves have been very kind of asshole-ish. They've always kind of stood in their way. But this version of themselves are kind of actually helping them. So they give them the song, and now they're like, okay, we've done it. We're gonna go back in time and save the world. But then they meet the killer android, and I guess we should go back a little bit more. The killer android kills everybody.
Yes.
At some point.
Yeah, he sends like the entire group, the daughters, the whole side plot with the musical people. Yeah. They all get sent to hell. Everybody gets sent to hell. They all get
sent to hell.
Yeah.
And so that's a problem. And then the androids like, they tell the android, oh hey, we got it. We don't kill us. We have the song. And then he's like, oh great. By the way, I killed everybody.
Yeah, basically. And then they're like, well, if everyone's dead, if we don't have a band, then we have to go get them, right? Bill and Ted logic, like kill us anyways, so we can go get them.
Classic Bill and Ted logic.
Yeah.
But then he's like, no, I can't do it because my programming says if you have it, I have to save you. I can't kill you. But then they kind of trick him into doing it, and then they all end up in hell, including the android. Including it, and even Bill and Ted are like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And then you get to these really funny, kind of awkward interactions with the android. Like the android's kind of trying to be like personable and human, right?
Yeah. I thought that gag was dragged just a tiny hair, just a little too long. I get it. It's funny, and it is funny. And the what's his name, Anthony Kerrigan, who is if you watch Barry, you would know who he is. Plays the robot, plays it really well, like that awkward humor. But I just thought it went on just a hair too long, the gag, where he was like, yes, we get it. There's a robot in hell, and his name is Dennis. It's funny, but like just, because he like superimposes himself into every scene.
Yeah, he's just like inserting himself. Oh,
yeah.
There was one that was really funny where they're like, oh, God, like Bill and Ted are like, oh, what are we going to do? He's like, yeah, what are we going to do, guys?
Right.
Like, this is terrible, guys. It's
right,
like,
yeah. Like, he's part of the team where he even knows what's happening.
Yeah, it's like, bro, like, no. So, yeah, then finally, Bill and Ted, they find everyone, including, like, it's like Mozart and Grom and Kid Cudi. Like, they're all dead. Yeah, right. And so they're like, okay, how do we get out of here? Well, we got to find Death.
How did we get out of here last time? Yeah, exactly. This was great. Like, again, as like a fanboy, I was just like waiting for the moment. I was like, oh man, they're gonna, and there is a shot of Death right when the dad gets shot. You can see him like falling in through this portal or whatever, and Death is there with him. So they plant him early, and you're like, oh shit, Death is in this movie. Like, that's exciting. And he was part of the marketing, so that part was like a bit spoiled, I guess. I consider everything a spoiler, so I was just like, I knew he was in this movie, so like we're finally building up to seeing Death again, played again by the same actor, doing the same stupid accent, and I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And they have this long kind of diatribe about, oh, I was in the band and you guys kicked me out. And blah, blah,
it's just like this classic, because the way that the second movie ends is like he's part of the band, and then there's like any band that you look up from the late 80s, early 90s, or like a Guns N' Roses or something, like there's always this disputes of like who owns the name. Like they always have a bad falling out, and that's what this is parroting. And I thought it was so funny that Death would be the guy that they were like having beef with, and they have to resolve this beef before they can get out of hell. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. That was a really funny scene, like talking about like, oh, I was the best. Death's like, oh, I was the best part of the band, like blah blah blah. This and
exactly, that. Yeah. It's just like Axl Rose versus Slash or some bullshit. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, and so then this is again where the daughters intervene, and they're like, well, let us like smooth this over. Yeah. So they convince Death to join back in the band and basically help them get out of hell. So he does that, and then everyone gets on the SWAT car. Yeah. They get on the SWAT.
Yeah. Which is the van also went to hell.
Yeah, the van did go to hell. Just totally crazy. And everyone, including the android, again, like with that joke continuing.
Nonstop, yeah.
Yeah. They all go back, and now they're in the middle of like a freeway. In somewhere in SoCal, and so that's where they figure out how to put on the concert. And
there happens to be, because the world is ending, right? So there's historical figures like popping all over the place, and so the freeway is blocked off and is locked. And there happens to be, thankfully, a Guitar Center van that is also on the freeway, so they're able to loot the Guitar Center van, which amazing product placement. Just like what a great way. Yeah. So they loot the Guitar Center van and they get like all of their equipment to set up for this concert.
It's like, whoa, Bill, did you know that Guitar Center delivered?
It's like, whoa, we have instruments now.
It's just so funny. It's great. It's great. Yeah. And so then the final piece of this puzzle basically is that, it's also that the daughters are the one who are going to basically create the song. And that they're just, Bill and Ted are just there to back up their daughters.
So that was the twist to the movie. Again, we're well into spoilers territory. If you care, you've already seen this movie, right? Yeah. But that was another one of the things that I saw in the reviews of people who hated this movie was just like, this was the prophecy, was that Bill and Ted were going to write the song. Now, granted, Bill and Ted technically still write the song, right? Billie and Thea. Whatever. But like people were upset. They were like, well, this movie's not so much about Bill and Ted. It's about the daughters. It's a passing of the torch. I feel cheated, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, it was always going to be a passing of the torch, right? Like as soon as you saw the daughters. So I was like, whatever with it at that point, you know, but I mean, I guess you could say that Bill and Ted themselves don't get as much credit as they deserve, maybe just based on the ending of the second movie. Cause they basically write that song at the end of the second movie. And it's like a Kiss song or something. But but yeah, no, that was the twist basically, is that the daughters are the ones who are writing the song, and then Bill and Ted are actually supporting and propping up their daughter, which is the whole message of the movie, right? Yeah. It's that your kids are your legacy and all that. Yeah, and
there's also again more timey-wimey weird stuff.
A lot of it.
Where they use time to give everyone ever like an instrument so they can all play together.
Yeah. Which at that point it was starting to lose me a little bit. I felt like they were just kind of rushing it at the end a little bit, and we can talk about that once we get into like the final thoughts.
Yeah. But yeah, and they put on this thing, they play the song, and reality goes back to normal. Mm-hmm. And everyone is spared. Yeah,
pretty much. And then it just ends like really abruptly. I thought really abruptly.
Yeah, there's like a voiceover or something, and then
there's no falling action. It's just they write the song. Well, they're playing it as they're writing it, and then narration, and then that's how it happened. Bloop, credits. But the credit sequence is cool. They're just fans, I guess, of all over the world, you know, playing the song or playing songs in general are like interposed with the credits, with the text of the credits. I saw some celebrities in there too. Like I think I saw Weird Al in there and a couple other musicians in the credits. So that was kind of cute. But that's basically the message of the film, right? Is just it's a passing of the torch movie with Bill and Ted.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I guess let's get to the final thoughts. Like, how'd you like this film? What'd you think about this in relation to the other films in the trilogy?
What did you think about it? I want to hear your thoughts first.
I thought it was fine. Like, you know, me and my girlfriend, we watched it and we thought it was funny. We thought it was awesome. We liked it. It was fun. I mean, I think probably the first, like, I feel like the way that I've watched the first one was like really kind of, you know, like there was a time where you just kind of watch stuff on TV and it would just come on and you just be like, what's that?
100%. Yeah.
It was one of those. And it's just like, oh, this is interesting. And you just get engrossed in it. You're just like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. You know, like that discovery, it just makes you never forget it. And I don't feel like I had the same connection with this film. But yeah, there was stuff that was really funny. I think the jokes, a lot of there was a good number of jokes that hit.
They hit a lot. Yeah, they hit a lot better than I thought they would, honestly.
Yeah. I thought they did a good job with that. And it got totally kind of convoluted, but I mean, it's always been convoluted.
They always do. Yeah.
That's not the thing that it's not like I want, you know.
It's not Primer. You're not like, how does the physics of this work?
It's not Primer. It's not Interstellar. It's not any of that stuff. Yeah. It's just fun. It's just here to have fun. And yeah, I thought this was pretty fun. And I did like the passing of the torch daughter stuff. And yeah, I thought that the daughters were really fun. Like the one daughter, like her mannerisms of mimicking the dad was just like hilarious. It was just like so funny. So funny. I thought that was great. Mm-hmm. I thought she did a better job than Samara Weaving. Samara Weaving kind of did her own thing, I think.
She kind of just cool. Yeah, she was just kind of there, honestly.
Really, yeah. I totally agree with that. but Brigette, like, she really went in on like trying to like totally
like,
mimic him.
80s Keanu is like perfectly captured. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so funny. It's like, whoa, this is like a female version of him in a different body, acting the same way, the same weird mannerisms, the same way of speaking. It's just so funny. It's so funny. I really like that. I thought it was great.
Yeah. I thought going into this, I was a little worried. So again, big fan of the first two movies. Like, I've probably watched them, I don't know, 50 times each. Like, I love those movies, and I saw them at a time, you know, like you were saying, like when you see movies on TV or whatever, like I watched them at a time when like I only had 5 movies to watch, and those were some of the movies that I was watching. So there was a lot writing on this, and also there's all the whole development hell thing, and I was just like, is it gonna be weird to see these guys in their 50s? Like, their voices are different. They're, you know, they look different. Their mannerisms are different. The world is different. Like, is this going to be weird? And in the very beginning of the movie, it's like a little weird, right? Like, Keanu Reeves' voice is like 10 octaves lower, right? Alex Winter honestly hasn't missed a beat. I think he was fucking perfect in this movie. And then you kind of settle into it. And then the jokes are really funny. And I thought they did a really, really good job. There's a lot of these movies coming out recently. One that I compare this to would be like Jay and Silent Bob reboot that came out last year. Another one of my, I love these like duos of like stupid characters types of movies. I made one of those myself. Yeah. I just love this genre, like Bad Boys, things like that. And so I thought, like, Jay and Silent Bob did the whole daughter thing, because they had the same plot basically in Jay and Silent Bob. It was just the passing of the torch to the daughter with like daddy issues sprinkled throughout. But I thought they did that a little bit better. My main problem with this movie with Bill and Ted is that it's too short. I get that it's trying to hit the same length as the old ones, and it's trying to hit the same pace, and it does have that, because they're very fast paced. All of these movies, they just, you go, time traveling, fucking Mozart's here, like, oh, isn't that crazy? But I thought it was just a little too short, and they try to cram too much into it. There's like at least 3 different plots that you have to keep track of, right? Like we talked about. Yeah. And so I thought that the daughter stuff was funny. I like that they're doing a retread of the first movie. The wife stuff gets lost for me.
It does get lost, yeah.
And it's not that it's bad. It just gets lost. There's just too much happening. And then like they try to cram in the whole hell thing. The writers, once again, have a nice cameo. They had a cameo in the second movie. They had a cameo in this movie. They play the 2 demons where they're and they have the comments where like, oh, there's that a robot in hell? Like, yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
So they do again, but they hit all of the things. I just thought it was a little too short. Could have used maybe 10 to 15 more minutes, but I don't know if they had 10 to 15 more minutes of footage. I don't know if that's, you know, but if they could just like, again, we don't need to know the mechanics of how this thing works, but if they had just spent a little more time with each one of these plot lines, I felt like it would have made the movie a little bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
In general, I'm happy with it. For a movie that almost never happened, this is about as good as I could have ever asked for. They have a very good director in this movie. Like, he did a very, very competent job, Dean Parisot. So I thought it was great. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I don't think it was never going to be another, like, you're never going to have that moment again, right? Like the first time you saw Back to the Future, like, I don't care what movie Robert Zemeckis makes, you're never going to have that moment again, right? So you're never going to have the moment of like, oh shit, I'm seeing Bill and Ted again for the first time. But for what it is, I think it's about the best case scenario for this thing.
Yeah, it's super fun, and it's just like a fun button on, like, and I don't think it really, there are some where you feel like it can undermine what happened before. I don't really think that happens. I wouldn't really agree with that. Mm-hmm. But I do think that it was a fun way to like kind of add on to what's come before.
I think so. There's a lot of these revivals that are trying so hard to, like the Star Wars, for example, trying so hard to keep the story going forward. I think this works perfectly. If the first 2 movies are the only movies that you've seen, you saw the ending, right? This is just a nice little, it feels like a party almost of just like, let's get the band back together, literally, and just do another one. Let's just do another one. And that's what this felt like to me. And it didn't feel like it shits on the old ones at all, because it's very respectful to the old ones because of all the talent involved. So I thought it was, again, just as good as you can get something like this 30 years later, when the industry is different, the world is different, people's sensibilities are different. Like, the fact that it works as well as it does is pretty impressive.
Yeah, totally. So I think that's our feelings on Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Final score?
I would say this is like a 6.5 for me. I thought it was solid, not amazing, but it was funny, and there was a lot of stuff that was really, really fun. But yeah, I would agree with you. Like the ending's a little abrupt, and it feels like there's the denouement is not here. It's just like hey, we did it. It's over. But like that sometimes that happens when you can't, like, it was hard enough for them to make this film already, and they probably just didn't have funds or something happened, and they're just like, well, look, we got it.
right.
Let's put it out there.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say too, is if they had maybe, just 15% more budget, this would have been a much better movie. But considering what we have, like, I'm really happy with it. I'll give it, I'm trying not to be too much of a fanboy, but it's at least a 7 for me.
Yeah. No, I think it was fine. I think it was a really good addition. I thought that actually, like, a lot of the special effects were pretty good.
They were. The future stuff, the future landscape stuff, I thought was really cool, and the hell was really cool.
Yeah. There's like a shot where they're in hell, and then they kind of look over this cliff, and they just see hell, and there's like flying, burning dragons.
I've seen that shot in the trailer. It's like in every like, even the 15-second like Twitter version of the trailers, like it's in every single trailer.
Yeah,
you could tell they were happy they got that.
Yeah, and it was it was good. It looked great. So yeah, it's a good film. I think it was a good film. Definitely worth watching, worth your time.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else we want to talk about? Do we want to talk at all about, I guess, the tumultuous process of this film happening, or do you think we covered everything?
Yeah, I don't know. You keep up with stuff like this, and the way that you keep up with any kind of current event stuff is you read an article every once in a while, and then you're like, oh yeah, it gives Bill and Ted's in hell, huh? So I don't know the details. I haven't done like the full research. Like I haven't made a research paper about this yet or anything, but basically from what I can tell is a couple of things were a key factor, right? It was the writers wanted to do it. Keanu and Alex wanted to do it. Orion coming back was a big deal. And then Steven Soderbergh was like the champion of this thing, which doesn't make any sense because he's not connected to any of the other things. But it does make sense in that the way that Steven Soderbergh works is that he has his people and he works with his people and he'll do whatever the fuck. So Ed Solomon wrote a movie for Steven Soderbergh. And that was the movie that was supposed to start shooting in Georgia, right when COVID hit. It was the one that he's making with George Clooney again. George Clooney and like a huge star-studded cast because, Steven Soderbergh. Yeah. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but he was basically like the one to make the phone calls. He gets an executive producer's credit who was just like, why the hell aren't we making this? The script was written in 2010. Like, let's just get it done. And I do think it's amazing that, first of all, Alex Winter's retired. He's not acting anymore. He's actually a really accomplished documentary film director, right? Like he's had Oscar nominations, I think, for that. Keanu Reeves has once again, like he's like ping-ponged back into superstardom with the John Wick series and a bunch of other films. And so it's just amazing that these guys were willing to just put all of that aside and just be in this movie. This movie could have been a disaster, right?
Yeah, totally.
This movie could have been like a 3 out of 10, a mockery. But I think it could have been an absolute mockery. But I think they treated it with enough respect, and I think they did a good job with it. And that's about all I have to say.
Yeah, because it was the same actors, it was the same writers, it's a lot of the same people, even small parts. Like the dad is the same actor.
Yeah.
You were saying who was the brother who married?
Yeah, Missy was in it. Yeah,
same actor.
It's funny because like she was the hot one in the ones that were made 30 years ago, and now she's just, I guess, like a cougar kind of a character. It's funny. It carries.
Yeah. And so that you can tell there's a love there. There's a passion for this really kind of unique film series. Think about it. I still don't understand how that second movie in particular, I don't know how that got made. It's so wild. It feels like a 90-minute music video. It's with like crazy camera angles and just throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks. Like, it's crazy to me that there was a time when these movies were successful. Like, what? Yeah, totally. And it's just a random kind of miracle of film that these things happened and were successful and have this sort of staying power in the pop culture ethos.
Yeah. And I do think it has something to do with, Keanu Reeves' star power, and Alex Winter for a while there, like, was doing well in the 90s. But yeah, I don't know. And I think because it appeals to a large audience, like a lot of these other buddy movies like Jay and Silent Bob or Bad Boys, like they're aimed towards a specific audience. Like this is not, Bill and Ted's not just for stoners. Like everybody, it's like the spirit of it is like all welcoming, which I think probably helps a lot too.
Yeah, that the whole stoner thing kind of, I think there's something came out recently where they said, I think even Keanu said like, oh, they're not stoners, which was
right.
interesting.
Yeah, because they don't smoke in any of the movies. Yeah,
because they're surfers, right?
Right.
Which is the different thing. There is definitely crossover, but they're like surfer bros.
Yeah.
Not really stoner bros.
But either way, like the stereotype is in there. So
yeah. It's like, hey, bro, no, we just surf a lot.
Yeah, and we also happen to be incredibly stupid.
Yeah, incredibly. Well, I would say there's like a naivete. Like that's their real thing, is they have this kind of this, and that's what's really appealing, is like their outlook of the world. Like, everyone be kind to each other.
Yeah.
Like that's the real thing that kind of brings all these movies together, and kind of like, like that's their worldview, and it shows in every film, and it's, it's cute, and it's nice, and it's positive, and yeah, that's why it transcends, and anyone can kind of get into these movies.
I think so. Yeah. There's no reason this should have worked in the first place, but the first movie was shot in 1987 and didn't get released until 89 because of, Dino De Laurentiis and all this shit. Like they went under. Again, studios just keep going under when Bill and Ted's trying to get made.
Yeah.
So it is amazing that, they've endured.
Yeah. So that's our review of Bill and Ted Face the Music. Yeah, let us know what you think. And we'll see you guys again next week. We'll have maybe another film for you guys, another review.
Oh, we sure will. We don't know what it is, but it's coming.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great night.
See ya.